It's the cold hard truth. Everyone really want to know what's going on with her show. Just get on the air and you will know it's Sandra. The queen of the mile road is here, helping people from everywhere. Get on the phone and you will hear Sandra. Now she will tell you how it goes, but don't you ever step on her toes, 'cause you will hear the cold hard truth from Sandra. They say she's the hero in town, helping people from all around. You get a call, your money is found, it's Sandra. Some will call her late at night just to say that there is a fight, and she will not just leave it alone. She'll get up and call on the phone, and when politics starts on her show, everyone really wants to know the way the things will really go with Sandra. Some will start to criticize, get on the show and tell pure lies, but soon they will realize it's Sandra. When they start to argue again, she'll pull the heads to the wind, and soon you will be a friend of Sandra. 'Cause every day everyone wanna hear from Sandra. Every day everyone wanna hear from Sandra. 'Cause every day everyone got to hear from Sandra. 'Cause every day everyone got to hear from Sandra.
If you're a parent right now, you already know the cost of living has gone up. Rent, childcare, groceries. When the cost of living rises, government must rise to meet it. And we have. Under the revised ECAP policy, our Early Childhood Assistance Program, we've increased funding to keep pace with what families are actually paying today for their children's early education. Who benefits? A father working every hour he can. A single mother doing it alone. A grandparent raising grandchildren they love. Maybe that's you. Up to 235 Caymanian children will benefit directly, and I want every single one of them to have the start they deserve. That is why we are here. If you've applied before and been disappointed, I encourage you to try again. If you've never applied because you assumed you wouldn't qualify, now is the time to find out. And if the funding didn't feel like enough before, it should now. Is your child 3 years old and Caymanian? You may qualify. Visit us at moeapplications.gov.ky and apply for the 2026-2027 academic year.
Have you completed and returned your business survey forms? The deadline for the annual business surveys is June 12, 2026. The surveys are confidential under the Statistics Act and exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. Your response matters. Do your part. Fill out and return your survey forms to the Economics and Statistics Office. For assistance in completing the forms or for more information, call 244-4676, 244-4600 or visit eso.ky. Remember, better data, better decisions, better business.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, Cayman. Happy Thursday. Or as we like to say around here, Friday, part one. How is everyone doing this beautiful Thursday morning? We have a lot scheduled for today. And quite frankly, oh my goodness, I've been trying to get this video played for quite some time so that we could have a bit of a discussion around this. And we have... for whatever reason, something always comes up. And so today we're going to start off with our video first, and then we're going to discuss the various elements of it. So a few weeks back, Caribbean Utilities Company, who most of us just know as CUC, they had their annual, and this is the second annual. Is it the second? Might be more years than that now, but I think it's the second annual. Maybe it's the fifth annual. Oh gosh. All right. I need to double check that. Women in Energy Conference. And really, I must tell you, it's a fantastic, conference that they put on. They have guest speakers from all over the world. This year was no different. They had a number of guest speakers at the event, including economist Marla Dukharan, who was the keynote speaker. And she talked about the fact that women are like the sun. So she did this whole analogy thing, which is pretty cool, that women are like the sun in the Caribbean. We always talk about solar. We're always talking about the, just the benefits of this untapped resource, right? We see the sun as limitless, which quite frankly, I don't know about that. I think everything has a limit, but as far as we know, the sun is relatively free, it's limitless, and it's an underutilized resource. So in her keynote discussion, she actually demonstrated how there is this parallel, if you will, between the sun being an untapped and underutilized, largely resource here in the Cayman Islands and beyond in the Caribbean, just like women are. So it was a very, very interesting analogy. And of course, she always delivers amazing, points, data points within her presentation. And I was taken aback. And I'll be honest with you, there were a few things that even I learned at this session that I said to myself, wow, I did not know that. I had no idea. And a lot of it is about the inequality in the workplace that women have to face, which essentially means that the truth of the matter is we actually have that same inequality in, our homes and our just communities and societies across the region. So it's a very, very interesting point. And I think that we'll start off with the interview today, and then we can kind of discuss it. And I hope that some of you, both men and women, will be inclined to call into the program and certainly give us your thoughts on, just what do you think? Do you think this is a real issue? Well, the data shows that it's a real issue. Just to be clear, that part of it isn't really debatable because the research is there. And that's why when she had this keynote discussion, she actually utilized her local ESO data to come to the conclusions that she's come to. But I can tell you that I wasn't necessarily surprised about that part of it, because we've talked about this pay gap, in particular when it comes to women who are oftentimes equally or more qualified than their male counterparts, but that does not reflect in the salaries that they're actually paid. So get your cup of coffee, sit back, listen to the interview, and then we'll chat about it after the interview. Recently delivered a keynote address at the Caribbean Utilities Company's Women in Energy Conference. And her presentation, which I was very, very fortunate to see in person, was amazing. And I must say that there was a line that really, when she said it, really stopped me and made me think. So before we go any further, let's go ahead and welcome Ms. Marla to this interview and say thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sandra. I really appreciate being here on your show again.
Yes, thank you. So this quote here, women are the Caribbean's second most underutilized and perfectly regenerative natural resource after the sun.
Yes.
Wow. Tell us exactly what that means, if you have to summarize that for our listeners.
Yes. Let's start with the sun. Obviously, the sun is a tremendous source of energy, and more the Caribbean is looking at installing solar power generation, which I think is going to be tremendously transformative for most of our economies across the Caribbean. The reason why I likened women to the sun is because, of course, we have so much sun in this region, almost too much sun, and yet we still have the majority of the Caribbean countries are dependent on fossil fuels for electricity generation and for powering transportation. I recently launched the Caribbean's first energy price index. It's available on my website that shows how expensive energy is in the Caribbean relative to the world and also relative to each other in the Caribbean. And of course, in the Cayman Islands here, you have one of the most expensive electricity costs. And so the sun is underutilized. We have so much of it, and we could use it to a greater extent to make energy cheaper, more accessible, more proof. We can proof our economies and our energy supply to external shocks like the war that we're facing right now, and also to natural disasters and the effects of disruption of natural disasters. And of course, we have all these women who are, which is the point I was making at the conference, more than 60% of women have tertiary education in the Caribbean, and less than 50% of men have tertiary education in the Caribbean. And Cayman is like that, the same as the rest of the Caribbean. Yet, women are underrepresented in the labor force. We participate less in the labor force, which means too many of us are at home with our tertiary education. And when we do participate in the labor force, we have higher levels of unemployment than men.
Wow.
And when we do have jobs, we are paid less than men for the same work. And so not only are we underutilized, just like the sun, we are underappreciated by these measures. And I think that it's an opportunity for our economies to grow and prosper more significantly if women were paid fairly and if we were supported so that we could participate in the labor force more equally to men.
Yes. It's so interesting because this education paradox that you talk about, I think is so incredibly fascinating. I was just speaking earlier to her cousin, Dr. Gadari, and he teaches at a local university. And he said that he's always surprised when he gets his new student roster, and invariably 90, sometimes even 97%, all female. All women students, all female students. And he will say to them, where are the men in the Cayman Islands? And they just kind of shrug their shoulders like they don't know. So when you talk about this in Cayman, the fact that women outperform men academically at the bachelor's level, 20% versus 16, postgraduate level, 11% versus 9%. It is just really shocking to know that women are oftentimes mothers. They tend to be caregivers. They have all these other roles that they're playing in communities in the Cayman Island society. at the same time, they're finding the means and ways to try to further themselves to get the education. But then the actual wage gap, which we're going to come to in terms of the numbers here in a second, don't reflect that hard work really that women are putting in. And it's a sad indictment. And I think a lot of, not just myself, but a lot of people were shocked by the data that you referred to in your presentation. Did it really surprise you?
No, it didn't surprise me because I've known this for a while on a regional level. I've highlighted this in particular in Cayman before at conferences that I've spoken at. So no, it was no surprise to me. I'm just sad that here I am, maybe 10 years since I first discovered this paradox, still lamenting the same thing. It is grossly unfair, but not only is it unfair, it is a huge loss to our socioeconomic progress that this resource in educated women is so underutilized. It is really putting a drag on our economies because it costs money and it takes time to get this education that you mentioned. And we struggle to do it because we are doing, according to the World Economic Forum, globally, women do 2 to 3 times more unpaid care work in the home, raising the young and looking after the elderly.
Yes.
So these gains are hard won, education-wise, yet we are not able to fully give back for what we have accomplished in terms of getting this education. And so it is a tremendous loss to society. And I'm just sad that here I am 10 years or however long it's been since I first saw this kind of data, that here we are still lamenting this problem.
And I know, in fact, that this education paradox and the wage gap is not something that's unique to Cayman.
No.
It is certainly not unique to the Caribbean. It is worldwide.
It is.
So it is a sad indictment, really, that women continue to strive oftentimes despite the obstacles that they face, but it's just a continual uphill battle. There's a day every year that's celebrated celebrates the wage gap that exist around the world. And in some countries, it is much more striking than in other countries. Given the size of the Cayman Islands, do you think now that we've said, listen, this is a regional problem, this is a global problem, in that context, is it something we can fix?
Absolutely. I think it is absolutely something we can fix at the micro level and at the macro level. In the first place, you can legislate that women and men for the same work, equal pay for equal work. And not all countries, some countries have this legislation and some do not. But even when you do have this legislation, enforcement is a question. So who is policing public sector and private sector to make sure that equal pay for equal work? Beyond the legislation, individual companies can set their own policy that we will pay women equally, and based on the skills, based on the education level, based on the work that they're performing relative to men. And you can have reports that are and audits done within a company and reports produced that would demonstrate to your staff members and publicly, if you choose to publish it, that you do not have a gender-based wage gap. So both in the private sector, public sector, and nationally, we can fix this problem. The question I was asking at that conference on Friday is, who's running the HR departments? And the reason I asked that is because in many companies, if not most companies, from what I have observed, the women are the ones who largely populate the HR departments. And I know for myself, as when I've had to hire staff, I could never pay a male economist who I've just hired, with a master's degree, more than a female economist who I've just hired with a master's degree. How do you, as an employer or someone in HR, do that? And I feel like those of us who are in HR need to look at ourselves and look at our policies and do better intentionally to close that wage gap.
Yes, absolutely. That wage gap, as you say, women actually dominate, according to your findings, the lower wage brackets across all sectors in the Cayman Islands, right? So at the lowest earning levels, under Cayman dollars, $23.99 per month, women take up 56%
Yep.
of workers in that bracket, but represent only 33% of the total wage earnings at that level. Explain and break that down for us.
Okay, so first of all, this is data from your Economics and Statistics Office,
Yes.
right? This is the ESO. And this ESO data on wages in Cayman, you have various brackets, and they put the amount of men and the amount of women by each wage bracket. Like you
Yes.
said, there is below 2,399 per month, then
Yeah.
you have 2,400 to 4,800, and so on and so on, all the way up to over 16,800 per month. And then they give the breakdown of female versus male workers in these brackets. Now, female share of total workers. So let's say you have 5 workers at the bracket of less than 2,399. Basically, women make up more than half, 56%. And in terms of the amount of total wage earners in the whole economy, so if you look at that that blue horizontal bar, the 33% means that of all women working in the economy, 33%, 1/3 of them are in that bracket.
Wow.
So we make up the majority
Yeah,
versus
in the
men in
lowest
that bracket. But also of all women working across all brackets, 1/3 of them are in that bracket. So we are really dominating in 2 ways. That lowest bracket of less than 2,400 Cayman dollars a month.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, fully 1/3 of all women in
Yeah.
this economy.
Yep. And the sad part, when I now think about that, I think, wow, a lot of those women are single mothers.
Yep, that is the largest category of households in the Caribbean. Female-led single parent households is the largest category of households across the board in the Caribbean, not just in Cayman. And so what that means is that if as women dominate the lowest wage brackets, and by the way, they dominate the lowest wage brackets across all sectors, not just in tourism or, any other sector, across all sectors, it means that children are being, how should I say this, disadvantaged if their mothers are not earning where they should earn, because like we just discussed, more than 60% of us have tertiary education versus less than 50%.
Yes.
I think many times employers forget that women have, or women shoulder 2 to 3 times more unpaid care work in the home, and therefore maybe some allowances should be given for these. I mean, the mere fact that women are the ones that give birth, right, means that we inherently have, especially at the earliest ages of children's lives, just that much of a closer responsibility to look after these children.
Yes.
So where is the allowance for that? Because we are raising the next generation.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So if we don't get that right, you can end up with massive social problems. And we've seen that all over the world.
Yeah.
All over the world.
And that's, in my opinion, too close to the poverty level as well.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very easy for those same women, that 1/3 that make up that, economic bracket, to then easily fall into poverty.
Poverty. Yep. I don't know if that's a living wage here in Cayman. What would you say? Less than 2,400
No.
Cayman dollars a month. Is that a living wage?
I wouldn't think so.
That is a poverty wage.
But there are people who are having to do it every single month,
According,
unfortunately.
there's a terminology for that. It's called the working poor.
Yeah,
They're not unemployed,
right.
but they're not able to live a decent standard of living on that wage.
Yes. Very sad. Now let's look at the other side of the spectrum here. The highest earning level, that over KYD, 16,800 per month.
Yeah.
So in that one, women are only 40% of earners.
Yes.
And just represent 2% of total female earnings at that level. So break that down a little bit for us.
So in Cayman Islands, people earning over 16,800 Cayman dollars a month, 40% of the workers earning more than 16,800 are women, 60% are men, right? And of all women employed in the economy, only 2% of those women employed in the economy are earning that wage. Only 2%. The next lowest number we have at 1% are women earning, 1% of women earn between 14,400 and 16,800 Cayman dollars a month. Less than 1%. So 2% earn a little more, but 1%, yeah. So in total, 3% of women who are earning wages in Cayman earn over 14,400, basically. 3% of women who are working. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So this is not accidental.
I don't think it is. I mean, this is something that has existed since the beginning of time. It again exists globally, not just in this region, not just in Cayman. Everywhere, you know, when we celebrate International Women's Day, there's always data and articles talking about how far have we come in closing the wage gap. During COVID, we actually took some steps back. We were making progress in terms of closing the wage gap globally, and then somehow during COVID, I guess because of how women dominated the frontline worker segment of the workforce, we somehow took some steps back in terms of closing that wage gap. It got wider in COVID and post-COVID, apparently.
That's unfortunate.
Yep.
Persistence in decisions made at the hiring level, promotion and compensation reviews are ways in which organizations can try to set a better example.
Absolutely.
Policymakers need to start thinking about their role in all of this as well.
In perpetuating this injustice, for sure. Policymakers, boards. I mean, speaking at this conference, I had to highlight the fact that globally, women hold about 28% of board seats. And parity, meaning equal men and women represented on boards, is not expected until 2038, according to the data. But half of CUC's board are women, and they actually have a female chair. So, of course, I had to congratulate them on this. So, it can happen. It can be done. You know, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It can be done. And I think that once you have women in these kinds of policy setting positions, not just in the public sector, in legislature, for example, in parliament and so on, but even at the board level in private companies, I would hope that the women at these levels use their influence to help set policy to correct this gender gap.
Let's talk a little bit before we move on to the labor force participation and unemployment. Sectors where we see these women sort of cluster around the lowest pay. So household employers, that's 16%
Domestic workers,
of
really,
the total workforce. The mean wage there is only $924 per month.
Yes.
That's not a livable wage.
No.
By any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Then we have restaurants, accommodation, wholesale, retail, admin, support services. So that covers the gamut, quite frankly, because that would be, you know, tourist sectors, restaurants, hotels, retail shops, but then also admin and support services would be in small to perhaps medium-sized businesses.
Yes, that slide was quite striking. So 16%, the largest of all sectors measured by the ESO, and there are many in this chart, where women have the majority of representation in terms of the percentage of the total female labor force. 16%, as you highlighted, is the single largest sector where women are represented, is households as employees, meaning domestic workers.
Yes.
And they are earning the lowest wage of $9.24. The second largest categories in terms of the percentage of the total female labor force, 10%, are in professional services and wholesale and retail. And the wages there are, let's see, looking like around 6,000 a month is what I'm seeing there. So these are numbers that are not very comforting, because at no point do you see women in terms of their participation in any across sectors. We are the overrepresented in the lowest wage sectors, and we are dominating at the lowest wages, which we already as well just discussed. And the thing about Cayman, which is, I guess, unique compared to other Caribbean countries, the women who are in these lowest wage sectors, such as hospitality and households as employers, a lot of them are imported labor. You know, a lot of these are foreign workers who've come in to be nannies and housekeepers and helpers and so on. And these are the women that have the least protection in terms of insurance, pension, social welfare, health insurance, that kind of thing. So not only are they already earning low wages, they don't have safety nets the way a Caymanian would, the way a woman who has a higher salary would. So they are extremely vulnerable.
Yep. And there's no requirement for them to have a pension plan. They're exempted from paying into pensions. So
and health insurance as well?
Health insurance is mandatory.
It's mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they do get health insurance, and then whatever the wages are. Yep. And then the highest paying sectors, professional services and financial and insurance, have far fewer women, although the salaries there are much higher.
Yes.
There's far fewer women proportionally in those.
Yes.
There are going to be women who are listening to this and thinking, okay, maybe they're just starting out their careers. Maybe they are in that 1/3, where they're making less than $23.99 per month, so that they don't stick in that lowest bracket their entire lives. What would you say, Miss Marla, as someone yourself who's an accomplished professional, what do you say to young girls, young women, about what they need to do to ensure that they don't stay at the bottom of that wage, scale, that category?
I think we're lucky to be living in a time, Miss Sandra, where you have so much information available online and on social media about these kinds of things. I'm just an economist, so I am not a life coach. I'm not a, HR professional. But I have seen sort of podcasts and interviews and articles and so on talking about things like the fact that men are the ones, when they come to a performance review, come with I need a raise. I've performed well, I need a raise. And women are socialized to be grateful for what we have and accept it and say, God is love, thank you, Jesus, and move on. And I feel like maybe the younger generation of girls and young women can probably break that cycle that we, as older women, probably had to, and certainly I know I did. I have never asked for a raise. Never. Have you ever in a performance review said, you know what, I performed well and you're happy with my performance, when can I have a raise? I've never. And I feel like we can, maybe help coach the next generation of young women, mentor, and say to them, don't make these mistakes we made. There's so much material online to help coach you as to how to conduct yourself in a performance review, how to conduct yourself in an interview, how to ask for more, and how to know your worth. And those are things that I wasn't taught these things, I was not.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to ask a few more questions and then we're going to start to wrap up.
Sure.
Can we have a look then at the labor force participation and unemployment? Because, of course, once again, this is really, really important. So looking at the 2024 labor force participation, we had 83.3% of the men. This is some of the key data points versus 78.3% of women. But this unemployment rate of men were at 1.8% and women were at 2.9%.
Okay.
What's going on there?
What's going on there? Okay, so let me just first explain. This is again ESO data.
Yes.
2024 was the latest that they had available. So labor force participation is out of everybody who's aged, say, 18 to 65, which is sort of considered the working age population, how many of them are actively working or seeking work? Because not all of them will. Some will decide to stay home and help look after the next generation, etc., etc. So you will not have 100% labor force participation because there will always be some men and some women who either don't want to work or don't want to seek work for whatever reason. I must tell you that Cayman has the highest labor force participation rate in the region. There are countries in the Caribbean where half of women participate in the labor force, meaning the other half have chosen not to participate in labor force. They're not employed, nor are they seeking employment. So at least men and women are more productive in the Cayman Islands, either working or seeking work. So they participate in the labor force. But again, 83% of men in 2024 are seeking participation in the labor force and 78.3% of women. So it means that, 20-30% of women decide that I'm not going to work for whatever reason. Not so bad compared to regionally. Now, when you look at the unemployment rate, unemployment is of those people who are in the labor force, not those who've decided to stay home. Of those people who are in the labor force, how many of them are seeking employment and cannot find, right? And that's 1.8% for men and almost 3% for women in 2024. Again, this is, statistically speaking, on a regional scale, very low, very, very low. We have countries in the Caribbean that have double-digit unemployment. We have countries in the Caribbean that have 40-50% youth unemployment.
Wow.
And youth unemployment is a global problem. But so these are very healthy statistics as it relates to the regional comparison, but it means fully about 3% of women who would like to participate in the labor force and are looking for work cannot find work in Cayman. About 3% as of 2024.
Right. Do we need to be concerned about the spread between men versus women, that there are more women who are unemployed?
Absolutely, because if 1.8% of men can't find work and 3% of women can't find work, but we're more educated than they are.
What's really going on?
What's really going on? Again, who's in HR? But then also depends on the skills that are required from the employers versus the skills that these people hold. And it could be that they have skills that are just not in demand in the labor force. So that's also a consideration. So it's not strictly a gender thing. It's about as well the skills gap, the skills that are needed versus the skills that they have.
Right. And did the ESO report, I don't know if you would have seen this, but does it look at that at all to say that these are the industries that are more in demand in Cayman? So is it more construction versus...
I believe there was a breakdown by sector, but I can't remember if there was a breakdown by sector by gender.
Okay.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but I would encourage you to go to the ESO and have a look, because they do have some pretty good reports at the ESO. I must congratulate the ESO here.
Yeah, they do a very good job. They're actually doing, we've been promoting it certainly on the morning show, that right now they're doing both the labor force survey for 2026. So 25 is now out. as well as the business survey, the annual business survey for 2026 as well.
Fantastic.
So it's mandatory that people participate, but some people still find every excuse in the book
To not.
not to participate. But it's information like this that we get that is critically important information.
Absolutely.
As to why you should want to participate in those reports.
I think they also are running the next survey for the quality of life report. And I must say that this is, I think every country should be measuring this. And I, again, congratulate the ESO because it does give the policymakers a very good idea of where are the areas we need to be improving. Things like, which got some of the lowest scores, job quality, waste management, economic and financial security. Those are just a few I'm seeing on the chart here that have some of the lowest scores.
If I were to conclude, you know, when you talk about women participate less in the labor force, which makes sense because they're more
paid less.
educated, but then they're paid less. Why would you stay in a system that undervalues you, of course, is sort of a question that might be going through some people's minds.
And that's a fair question. And maybe it's about being your own boss and being more entrepreneurial. But I mean, that's not always an avenue that the average person can explore. Generally, if you become an entrepreneur, you need a couple years before your business can be net positive revenue. And if you don't have a safety net, if you don't have a support system financially, and you have a family to provide for, that may not be an option available to you.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. When women pull back from the labor force, the economy loses, and there's an actual direct loss to the GDP, to productivity, to household incomes. I think that is the takeaway when we're discussing this labor force participation and unemployment, and even the wage gap, right? It really does impact the entire country, not just women.
And
women,
the next generation
children.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I feel like, and I meant what I said at the end of that presentation when I was wrapping up. I was not saying this lightly, that energy is foundational to life, which I demonstrated earlier in my presentation. But women are also foundational to life, and we can make or break humanity. And I think that it is a no-brainer that women, as the main caregivers, as the ones who are more educated, should be more supported and be treated fairly in the workforce.
Yes. So I think we could probably, as you ended your keynote presentation with energy in women, as you say, are foundational to life, we could probably wrap up with that for this interview as well. Because the sun is free, available most days. So are women's talents, you know, freely given a lot of times within the community right here within the Cayman Islands.
Yes.
And so the Caribbean just keeps underutilizing both of those.
And undervaluing both of those. And I feel like the more that we value and embrace and utilize both the sun and the woman, the better off we will all be.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, folks, you've been listening to Miss Marla Dukharan, Caribbean economist. I think we need to stop calling you a Caribbean economist and just say worldwide economist. She goes all over the world, and she participates and, you know, gives presentations. And please check out her website. Give us the website address.
www.marladukharan.com.
And she has a lot of wonderful reports, monthly reports that you can sign up for. There's a newsletter that you can receive, and of course follow her on all of the various social media channels. Thank you so much, Ms. Marla.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for having me again. It's always a pleasure, and it's always a joy to be in the Cayman Islands. Thanks for everybody who's received me so warmly and made my time here so enjoyable. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. Good morning again. Those of you who are just joining us, maybe you joined a little bit late. You're like, who's that beautiful voice being interviewed by Auntie Sandy this morning? Well, that was none other than economist and advisor Marla Dukharan. And as I said, she has quite a substantial resume of being a researcher, guest speaker at a number of conferences worldwide. And I can tell you from my experience with her, she loves data sets, a lot of things that most of us shy away from because we simply do not understand how they work, how to interpret them. And so thank you so much. Shaka Zulus's excellent interview, super impacting. So let's try to break down some of this because ironically, recently we're talking about the population in Cayman being at, we can realistically say, I think 100,000 people. And what does that mean for the Cayman Islands and how we feel about that? We can have our feelings about all bits of data that come to us. And by the way, can we take this opportunity to do a big shout out to the ESO, who does an amazing job. And I want to invite you. I feel like they've recently revamped their website. It looks amazing, very, very easy to navigate. And, as someone who knows that most people will shy away from numbers and, ESO data, I think the easier it is for the information to be accessed, the simpler it is for the information to be accessed, the more people will utilize those resources. So I was just having a look this morning at their website, and it's very, very easy to navigate, lots of good colors. It's divided in a way that is helpful, I think, to the average person. So there's so many reports that they do. You really got to go check it out because if you go under their report section, you see that they do a consumer price index inflation report. They do household budget survey report, the labor force report, which is one that is going on right now. And they also dropped the 2025 report. And that is the one that Ms. Dukharan would have pulled her talking points, like the data from, right? But it was a 2024 one because I think 2025 just recently came out. Quality of life report, which you heard her make mention of. And historically, they have some other ones here as well. Occupational wage survey, occupational wage survey 2023 and the various tables and then some others. So please go and have a look at their website. It's eso.ky. And, they talk about things like gross domestic product, what it actually is, the average consumer price index, estimated gross domestic product. And this information, these are the latest indicators. And this information actually helps policymakers to make a lot of decisions about our lives, quite frankly, and what they will focus on, the economy, growth, even immigration policy. So I invite you to have a look at the ESO website. So we have a particular report that this interview and her actual talking points at the conference was based on. The labor force survey report for fall of 2024. Like I said, the 2025 one is actually out now. But I was really fascinated by so much of what she had to say during the conference that I really wanted to sit down with her and delve into this a little bit deeper. Remember when we were talking about the population and we were trying to look at some of the data sets that are actually in that report, and we're trying to understand exactly how it works. What does this mean? What did they look at? Listen, we're not the experts, but she is. That's what an economist does, right? They take this raw information and put it in such a way that I think it becomes easy for anyone to understand. And specific now to the women in the workforce, I think that she really highlighted quite a few key takeaways. And these are things like, I'm concerned about it because I'm a woman, obviously, but I'm also concerned about it as just being a member of this community because there has to be equality in wages in the workforce, right? And this is against the backdrop of living in a world, and I will say this, where there's so much shifting. I'm going to show you guys the video a little bit later on, but there's a movement in certain countries, not of least the US, where women are now being told to stay at home, that you're not the person who should be the decision maker in your household, to allow men to make all the decisions for us. Like, basically, there is this regression in the progression of women, which is just so I see this stuff, and I was just looking at one again this morning, and I am honestly flabbergasted that so-called intelligent women will sit down and be a part of this, like, oh no, women shouldn't have the right to vote after we fought so hard for women's suffrage. Women should not get an education after we fought so hard to be able to be considered in universities, to try to have equal access to education. And so the stripping away of all of these things really is going to demoralize women and put us back a century or more. I'm hoping that movement hasn't taken foot in Cayman, but all of these things become part of the conversation. And we can't be unrealistic that there are people who support those political agendas elsewhere who are Caymanians, who live in this country. And some of them, I dare say, are actually policymakers as well, right? Or they sought elected office. There was some that we saw how closely aligned they were to the beliefs of the Trump administration. This is what this is, the turning point people. And they were running for political office, and they wanted to be leaders of this country, whether they got elected or not. To me, this is flabbergasting, because we have to keep an eye on all of the elements, I think, of this conversation. So this is something that affects every single household in Cayman, whether you realize it or not. Women, work, wages, and why the numbers simply don't add up, right? How is it? We talk about the education paradox, right? How is it that women tend to be more educated, and yet our salaries are not reflective of that? So I saw a couple comments that came in. Thank you guys so much for already starting to participate in the conversation. I've had a few that have also come in via private messaging. And I saw, thank you so much, Miss Anita. Miss Anita said she was enjoying the conversation, but she asked the question, which is an interesting one, or a statement rather, it must be only your parliamentarian women that receive equal pay to their male counterparts. Anthony, you had a fantastic question as well. I'll come to you in just a second. Ms. Mona, I was a little bit taken aback by yours, because I'm not sure if I'm misreading this, but when you say equal pay for equal work, women can't compare to what a man do. What do you mean by that? So we're all built different for different roles. I'm a little bit confused, and I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but if I read it on the face of what you're saying, I'm not quite sure I understand it. So when you say that we're all built for different roles, right? We're not talking about manual labor, although there are lots of women who are capable of holding their own in a manual labor environment. They can work construction if they wish. We've got female firefighters. We have female police officers, and some of them are better equipped for the job and more fit for the job than men are. But I think this idea, and we have to be careful, the ideas that perhaps we grew up as children being exposed to and that we hear, and then we continue to perpetrate from one generation to the next. Like, I would never tell my daughter that we can't compare to what a man does. Why not? Right? Is there something stopping you? I mean, I know women physically who can outperform a man any day of the week, the average man, and even people who are super athletes. There are women who are, extreme performers in that area. So I think that some of this is about challenging the status quo in terms of how we are built. If you and I work in corporate Cayman, right, and we have the exact same position as a corporate administrator, what makes you as a man built any differently than me? It's not about being built. It's about the opportunities, the structure of the environment of society. So women often, as we said, they're expected to hold down a full-time job. They still have the children. right? So if you have 1 or 2 kids, you're going to have a period of maternity leave. You become less attractive potentially to an employer because of that, because you want to spend time with your children, with your babies, contributing and raising the next generation, which we're always talking about what an important role that is. But society as a whole doesn't really, demonstrate that we support women in all of these ways. We have one of the lowest maternity leave rates in the entire world. And so sometimes we'll even vocalize what sounds good, but in practice just doesn't add up. How are we different than men? They have less responsibility. So I guess they're built differently in that sense. They're not the caregivers, right? Traditionally speaking, when we have parents that are sick, elderly parents, when we have children that are sick, who is more likely to stay home with a sick child? The mother. So she's more likely to take off more time from work. She's traditionally the caregiver. She's responsible for caring for her parents. And on top of that, still getting an education, still working full time in the workforce, and still contributing to the home. If it's a 2-parent household, her contribution, she's got to do household work. Or, if there's a nanny or helper, she's responsible for coordinating and doing all of those things as well. Her schedule, his schedule, everybody's schedule. So I don't know, I kind of felt away when I saw that comment. And Mona, you can certainly tell me if I'm misreading what you've written here. But I think we continue to perpetrate these, 1880s ideas that no longer should be holding true in current Cayman. This is 2026. Okay. So it's interesting. I did see Anthony, and I thought this was a really good question. We did at one point briefly touch on this. He said, how do we get to wage disparity when most available employment posts are generally advertised inclusive of compensation? Does men do better in interviews to justify better negotiations? So I think that just because a job advert, which is required by law, is inclusive of compensation, as you well know, Anthony, the inclusivity is normally a range. So it's not a specific number, because there always has to be some room there for negotiation based on the specific criteria that individual might be bringing to the job, slightly different qualifications, slightly different experience. So there's always room for negotiation. So what this is really all about is based on the labor force survey. Across the board, really, women are, for the same jobs, we tend to have better education. And yet there is this unfortunate disparity where we still are being underpaid. So that range isn't reflected in the real world in a way that, quite frankly, is considered equity. So it's not equitable at all. It could be that women, again, because they've been conditioned in a particular way, they don't go into an interview with the same, I don't know what the word is, bravado. I'm not quite sure that a man does. And so we tend to be more submissive. We tend to not ask for raises. We tend to not ask for promotions, whereas men have always had this expectation of them that they will be much more forthcoming, right? There's lots of content that has been written around the differences between men and women in the workforce, right? When a woman is assertive in the workforce, oh, she's called all sorts of names. She's aggressive. She's the B word. She's this, she's that. Oh, she's difficult to work with. I mean, it is just so incredibly shocking, the disparity of how we think about men and women in the workforce. And so I think even that certainly in my mind plays a key role. So yeah, I do think that some of that is very possible. How women interview, how they've been conditioned to be submissive, even during the interview process, right? You take whatever you're given and you don't counter. How many of you women, just by show of, yes or no, how many of you have ever gone to a job interview and you have actually been presented with an offer. You interview well, you come back, you're presented with an offer, and then you just accept that offer. You don't counter it. You don't go, wait a minute, this offer is low. This is lowballing me. Yesterday, I was speaking to someone who, ironically, since we were talking about the agency recruitment firm, that guy, Praham, what's his name again, that we were discussing yesterday, they were saying that he had suggested them for a position and they ended up not taking the position. And because they opted not to take the position, they didn't specify why, but for whatever reason, he got really rude with her. And I thought, that's interesting. How many men, if they were in the exact same position, would he be getting rude with simply because they opted? And it was probably, quite frankly, down to finances. But I couldn't help but wonder how many men would he have treated in that exact same way. So these are some of the disparities that we have to deal with in the workplace. It is ironic that most HR managers tend to be women. But again, we are taking instructions from our directors in the company, from the lawyers in the law firm, from the partners in the accounting firm. So her power as HR manager is normally very, very limited to what the management in her organization, right, which tends to be men, let's be honest again, let's bring it back home, what they dictate and what they say should actually be done. So Strong Wilt says, I know some good female tilers and painters that are better than some male workers. And, even this concept of certain professions and industries. Why does this taste like coffee this morning? Did Miss Stacy accidentally give me coffee, not remembering that I don't drink coffee? I don't know what this is. Mocha mint. Ugh, my goodness, this is a little bit too close to coffee for my liking. All right, so I feel like I should learn how to like coffee though. 85% organic, gluten-free. Dandelion mocha mint. Okay, we'll see how we get on with that hot beverage this morning. So yeah, there's a lot of questions I think that really are brought to the forefront here. Strong Wilt, when you talk about female tilers, it actually made me think of Mr. Jefferson there, the young guy there. What's my painter friend's name? Michael. Michael has a painting company, and he employs both men and women. It's Magic Touch, if you ever need a good Caymanian-owned painting company. But, Michael, I know for a fact that he has some women who are painters on the job. And again, they tend to be very, very meticulous with their work ethic, how they paint. They tend to, quite frankly, clean up after themselves, unlike a lot of the men. So clients tend to be happier when they show up on the job. And so, yeah, we have to stop putting women in boxes about what's normal for women, what jobs we should be looking at versus our male counterparts, right? A lot of us, as I said, are raising the next generation of labor force workers. And so what does it say about us if we are pigeonholing these young women into, specific jobs? Like, you can only be this or you can only be that. Why? Right? There are lots of male dominated industries, from engineering, even economists. I would dare say that most economists are not women. And so the gap is there in so many different ways. Ms. Marla is in the chat this morning. She says the World Economic Forum found that globally, women perform 2 to 3 times more unpaid care work in the home versus men. Well, I hate to say it, but if you're a woman, you're a wife, this is probably no surprise to you. You've got a partner at home, and you're probably shaking your head going, yep, that's a statistic that we're all familiar with. So what does that mean? That means we're working more at home as well. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Just grabbing a quick charge for the show phone here. I saw it was a little bit low. So you're working more at home. You're working more in the workforce, getting paid less. I mean, I'm starting to feel a little bit salty this morning about what the statistics are actually saying. Morning, Marshall. Sherry Ann says Caymanians do not like to see an ex-Caymanian get no way and less speak out for their rights. You know, I'm going to tell you something though. This really isn't as much of a Caymanian versus Caymanian conversation as it is just women globally and regionally having to deal with these issues. So for example, I think it was last year that we would have touched on this, because in the month of September, we actually celebrate, let me see if I can get the date for you. I want to say it's mid-September. We actually celebrate Equal Pay Day. Well, Equal Pay Day is in March for the US, March 26th. And that's a date that symbolizes how far into the new year a woman must work to earn what a man was paid in the previous year. So let that sink in for a second, right? March the 26th, you have to work from January to March the 26th to really even come to what a man would have made in the previous year. And this year it fell on March the 26th, but it's a different day every year, meaning that women had to work all of last year plus nearly 3 months into 2026 just to match the salary that men earned in 2025 alone. Let me say that again, because I want that to sink in, right? When we talk about this wage gap, women in the US have to work, and this is Equal Pay Day trying to highlight the disparity. They have to work all of 2025 and almost an additional 3 months into 2026 in order to make what their male counterparts made in just 2025 alone. Now, I want you to think about this, because then we talk about the fact that we have a lot of women who are holding up single parent households. They're doing this alone with 1, 2, 3, multiple children. So imagine how infinitely difficult that then becomes, where you don't have the ability to rely on a second income. And this is why we come back to other conversations when we're here talking to young people saying, hold on a second, young ladies, maybe you need to think about what sort of decisions you're also making and what you're prioritizing when it comes to marriage, when you have children, right? Whether you get married or don't get married, you're 18 years old and you're having children at 18. And now we see, like I said, some people actually encouraging you to don't get educated, to have more and more children. Why? This concept of being barefoot and pregnant just doesn't sit well with me, because it strips you of the ability to make your own decisions in life. And why on earth would you want to do that? What's the benefit of stripping women from their ability to support themselves, to support their children, to be active members of any society? To me, that really sounds a little bit crazy, to be honest, right? Okay, so let's have a few comments that are coming in via WhatsApp. So this person says, good morning, Miss Sandra. Fantastic topic this morning. I have a question. How do you adequately police the pay gap when there are additional layers in the Cayman Islands which can contribute to pay inequality? For example, if nationality is also a factor. In some cases, I hear foreigners are paid more. In others, local people are paid more across the workforce. So in those cases, it is very difficult to police pay gaps. Well, we can police it, I think, if we have the correct the data points, right? And this is where, again, that ESO participation becomes really, really important. So whether you're a domestic worker or you work in a law firm, you're a doctor, whatever, when the ESO reaches out and they say, hey, do you have half an hour or an hour of your time to spare? I'm going to encourage you to say yes, Not only is it a requirement by law, but it is how we are able to get the necessary information, regardless of nationality, because they send this and interview people all over Cayman, right? So if we have that information, that is really the starting point. Then from there, I think our policymakers need to look at the why. Why is it happening? So you could argue at some point that some of this is created because of the domestic workers, right? So we do have a fair number of imported laborers who fall into that domestic worker category. But as you can see from the interview that we just shared there with Ms. Dukharan, that doesn't fully explain what's going on, because you get to other jobs where women are qualified, other jobs that are largely Caymanian workers, and you still have this disparity that you go, what is really going on here? So I think the way that you police it is you have to have the information to start. That's where it starts. And then from there, you start to ask the questions about why is this happening? And then we start to look for possible solutions. Okay, so I'm just going to pull up part of Ms. Dukharan's slides that she utilized during the conference to kind of show you some of those points as well. We have another contributor says, morning, Sandy. Thanks for having Ms. Marla's interview. I am a female and worked in the financial industry for over 30 years. I was really fortunate to work for a really good company, and I got countless promotions, which I never had to ask for. I just worked hard and was rewarded. Well, I mean, this is amazing, because I can tell you that this is not probably all that common, where you didn't even have to ask for promotion. It was given, sounds like, just on the merits of your performance. Now, the question I have, even when I see this, is you were given promotions, but the bigger question is, were you being paid the same equal pay for equal work, right? So whatever those positions were that you were being promoted in, were you actually being paid the same as your male counterparts? Most of the time, we don't know this because of, all of the secrecy that is involved in salaried information. Most people don't know what people make at work. So you assume that if there are two people sitting next to each other and they're doing the same work, that they're probably within, a small margin, 1 or 2%, making the exact same salary. But you would be surprised. Not necessarily the case. So the wage gap, folks, is not a myth. It's actually in the data itself, right? So Marla Dukharan pulled the Economics and Statistics Office numbers right here for the Cayman Islands, and here's what it shows. Women make up 56% of the workers in the Cayman Islands. My apologies, make up 56% of workers in the lowest wage bracket in this country. I'm going to say that again, 56%. Women make up 56% of workers in the lowest wage bracket in this country. Okay, that's the domestic unqualified minimum wage workers, right? But at the top of the highest earners, only 40% are women. And that represents just 2% of all working women on island. 2%. So the people who make the most money in Cayman, 2% of all working women are in that category. She asked the question, who is running the HR departments across the Cayman Islands? The better question is, like I said, because for most HR departments, it is a rubber stamping exercise. They're taking the directives from, and I've seen this especially in corporate Cayman, law firms, accounting firms. They're being told who to hire. Another question this morning. Thank you so much. This person says, good morning. Did your guest mention whether the stats reflect participation for women in the financial services sector? For example, law firms, accounting firms, and directorship services. There seems to be a lot more women who are partners and directors in financial services. So again, the data is certainly there based on salary. I'm just going to see if we can find this slide really quickly. But, she's extracted this data from the ESO report. So you can certainly have a look at it. But yes, I mean, this is the electricity part of her presentation, kind of talking about how that is so significant. But yeah, no, I mean, again, we talk about the highest earners, which you can presume that a lot of the highest earners in this country are going to be individuals who are in that, financial services, lawyers, and so on. They're the ones who are making, $12,000, $16,000 or more per month. So that data has to be, let me just quickly find some of these critical points here. That data has to be what is significant representation within financial services, which includes the law firms, accounting firms, and so on. So I would say yes, that would make sense that those individuals, right? 60% of women and less than 50% of men have tertiary education. So again, women more educated and still lagging behind in the sense that the money does not reflect that dedication to education. So fair point, women where women work versus where the money is. Going back to this person's question here, this addresses this directly. The sectors dominated by women in Cayman are also the lowest paying sectors. So yes, domestic workers, working in restaurants, accommodation, retail. So the mean wage for a domestic worker, someone who actually keeps your home, raises your children, while you go to work to get that higher paying job, is just KYD $924 per month. Can I just say that again? The mean wage for a domestic worker, and I think about myself as someone who employs a domestic worker, is $924 a month. And sometimes these people that's not just necessarily one child. They may have, because you had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children, the mean wage, average wage, $924 a month. Isn't that wild? And the vast majority of those individuals are foreign women with zero protection and very little voice. And I think, again, we need to think about that as well, right? We can't seek to uplift only ourselves if we're saying, okay, we need to have equal pay just for Caymanians in corporate services. And then nobody else benefits from the trickle down of that. So professional services and financial services, which are the two highest paying sectors in Cayman, have far fewer women, first and foremost. And so that gap, says Ms. Marla, is not an accident. She says, in fact, that this is a system. Have a look here. Monthly basic earnings, females, as a percentage of total wage earners, and then female share of the total number of workers. Thank you so much. I see lots of comments coming in. Ms. Darlene, good morning, says, in some workplaces, HR and management don't want to give promotions and allow employees to advance their education because they're afraid that those employees will be a threat to them. So they rather use their power and positions to hold them down and to disgruntle them. And that's unfortunate. And there is another sort of, discussion really that in the Cayman context is actually very, very important, where I think that is true because, and I've seen this, I think about, for example, when I worked at Maples, and I would see a lot of secretaries who, Caymanians, started out straight out of high school. They didn't have the benefit. Now, a lot of them are retired women, but they didn't have the benefit of necessarily being able to go off to university back in those days or to even secretarial school. They learned what they learned on the job. But that doesn't mean that after 10 years, 5 years on the job, that they didn't know the ins and outs of corporate Cayman, right? They could literally incorporate any complex structure that you can think of, whether it was shipping registration, whether it was these, big multi-billion-dollar deals that come across on these lawyers' desks. They were the ones who were doing the majority of the grunt work, right? The lawyer might have been doing the initial contact with the client, some emails, onboarding them or telling their secretary to onboard them. But the secretaries they're in the trenches and they're doing the incorporation. They're dealing with, registrar of companies. They're registering the companies. They're doing all of that work. And who do you think is making the big bucks every month? And who do you think is getting all of the bonuses and the drawdowns and partnership and all this sort of thing? It's not the secretaries, right? And there were times when I witnessed with my own two eyes when lawyers would come out because they didn't necessarily appreciate or understand the process. They would come out and ask their support staff, their corporate administrators and secretaries, well, how does this work? How is this done? And so they come and they learn on the job, which is interesting. And, it's pretty wild that, again, these things are happening. So to Miss Darlene's point, it is indeed an indictment, I think, on us that this continues to happen. It's something that happens in the real world where individuals are constantly fighting for recognition, especially women in the workplace. But Caymanian women even have a further uphill battle, if you will. All right, let me just pull in some of the additional comments. Lots of comments coming in on this discussion. And my apologies that it took us so long to get here. Every time I wanted to have this show, something else popped up. So today I said, it's not going to happen. Instead, we are going to start off with the interview so that nothing else comes up. All right, let me just see here. Okay, we even have some men weighing in the comment section as well. Oh my goodness, what's this one about? Okay. All right, let me just screen grab some of these and prepare them. Anthony says regression of women is all of women's fault. What? Regression of women is all of women's fault is the viral movement from music to entertainment and social life. Sandy, give me 1 second. Have you noticed that statement and its popularity? Man forgive woman money. Remember who pays the piper calls the tune. I'm gonna give me a second, Anthony, because I'm gonna get to this a little bit more detail here. But what I do find interesting, and I'm gonna share this video with you guys to kind of bring home the point. I am shocked but it makes sense, and I'll tell you why it makes sense. I am shocked that women are the ones who are at the forefront of this conversation about why men should be the leaders, why we need to give up our right to vote, why we need to do all of these things to allow, and I'm trying to see if this is the right video that I have here, but to allow men to retake control. And this is listen, more than anything else, this is a psychological warfare that we're in, right? At this moment in time. And who better to weaponize than other women, right? I mean, we look for women in our communities to All right. My apologies. Still having some computer issues here. But when you think about this concept of, okay, we want you to change the way that you think about women's suffrage, the way that you think about women's rights and all this sort of thing, right? Traditionally speaking, women are supposed to be the ones that support each other. We should have each other's back in the workplaces, even in our homes. Like if you're in a domestic situation where you're being abused by a spouse, a boyfriend, whatever, more than likely when you think of, oh my God, I need to speak to someone, you are more than likely going to speak to another woman about this, thinking that, you know, they're going to understand your situation more than your male counterparts. They're going to be more sympathetic. And so when I tell you that this is like a psychological warfare, it's like you pick women to fight against women and to convert women into this movement and to tell women, no, this is how it should be. This is what you should be compromising. You shouldn't want to go to work. You shouldn't feel like you need an education. When a young woman, who, by the way, not for nothing, but most of them have had the benefit of an education, but when they come to you and they tell you to give up your rights, to don't worry about getting an education, to be reliant on a man for your livelihood. That to me is just absolutely shocking, but it tends to be more impactful and more powerful on women because it is coming from a woman. Because you don't think, no, a woman would never tell me that. You know, she wouldn't allow a man to manipulate her to the position where we are now being, marginalized even further. Like who does that? What woman in their right senses would ever support such a position? So I think that it has a particular impact on women when the message itself is coming from another woman. And I want to see, there was an interview, just a little snippet yesterday that I was watching that brings home Anthony's point, as he says, of the impact of just having this economic freedom. You have to be so careful in life that you are not being controlled by someone simply because they are pulling the purse strings, as we say in colloquial terminology. Interesting indeed. Have a look at this video. And I want to have your thoughts because this is all part of a broader conversation that we're having here.
It's extreme belief.
Probably that women shouldn't vote. So I believe in a one-family voting system. I think it would bring back the nuclear family.
That's Savannah Faith Stone, and Turning Point USA just invited her to speak at their Women's Leadership Summit. It's the conservative movement's biggest event of the year, targeting young women and girls, where they tell them that they should give up on this whole education and financial independence thing and just be trad wives. I've been reporting on this event for years and write a lot about it in my forthcoming book. Savannah, a 20-year-old anti-feminist influencer with nearly 750,000 followers, may be their most extreme speaker yet. Last November, she said the only way to get young women to be conservative is to take away their voting rights. Savannah Stone runs an online group called the Submissive Society, where for $49 a month, you get access to monthly coaching calls and can take video courses that teach you how to embrace femininity.
Number one, he is the head of the household, which means he's the final decision maker. Does this mean I'm not involved in conversations or decisions at all? No, but it does mean that at the end of the day, he has the final decision.
In one clip that's since been taken down, she said,
"Consent doesn't exist in marriage. I know this is going to piss a lot of people off, but when you get married, your body belongs to your husband and your husband's body belongs to you."
This conference where she's scheduled to speak, which is taking place next month in Texas, has a long history of grooming young girls to become child brides and teenage mothers.
There are a lot of successful 35-year-old orthopedic surgeons that have cats and not kids, and they're very miserable.
The conservative movement is telling young women to get married as early as possible and have children even if they can't afford them.
Get married, have 1 million kids, and live out your American dream.
Now they're saying young women shouldn't even be able to vote. Click the link in my bio for more.
Wow. Shocking, but here we are. Yep. Now, to counter that, I want to show you guys something else, and this goes to Anthony's point. I think when we've got young people, Instagram viewers right here now, watching the program, and perhaps they're still trying to figure out where they stand in this world and how they think about things. Listen to what Reese Witherspoon
Ever let
had
somebody
to say.
control you with money? Somebody says, I'll take care of it, and I'll take care of you, and I'll take care of this. That person could leave. That person can hurt you. You always keep your job. Your job is your life insurance. My mom used to always say that to me.
Let me play that again in case some of y'all missed it.
Don't ever let somebody control you with money. Somebody says, I'll take care of it, and I'll take care of you, and I'll take care of this. That person could leave. That person can hurt you. You always keep your job. Your job is your life insurance. My mom used to always say that to me.
Yeah. So it's about the ability to make decisions for yourself and to have a degree of independence. You don't have that independence when you are relying on other people. And we have less of it as women when we can't even have equal pay for the work that we do. So Vanessa says, wow, back in the day, my helper was collecting $900, and that was back in 2004. Well, it certainly shows how little wages have increased for certain sectors, for sure. And perhaps, again, coming back to the conversation around minimum wage, why the government would have felt it necessary. Because, minimum wage might not be impacting me and you because we're not in that bracket, but it certainly does impact a lot of other people who are at that very, very low, starting rate. And this is why I always tell people, you shouldn't seek to live your entire life in a minimum wage bracket. You got to figure it out how to elevate yourself. But if you're a domestic worker, right? Again, a lot of these people are imported or domestic workers, mostly from Jamaica, the Philippines, a few other nationalities. But if you come from Jamaica, you have no skills. How do you bargain that you're going to be making more than the mean rate of $924 KYD a month? What are you bringing to the table? And this is why I say, even to domestic workers, go out there and see how you can elevate yourself. You can take classes to better yourself. You can do CPR and all these other things to be able to say, hey, I know how to do this. You know how many domestic workers have come to Cayman and never learned to drive? That is an asset to an employer. If you can get a driver's license and you have driving experience and you are able to drive, there's lots of households that need that additional person who some days I can't make it to pick up my daughter. I can say, hey, Miss Stacy, can you go pick up Gigi for me? Right? So that will automatically make you more valuable to your employer. Not only do you get sometimes access to a vehicle, to a car, but you'll even get paid extra money, knowing that, okay, if I need to go out, she can drive, she can take her to appointments, she can, I can't make it for that dental appointment today. Miss Stacy's there to take her. So domestic workers, don't think that you have to be stuck where you are either forever, because we have to educate and elevate all women, right? The boat just doesn't rise the top few decks. The ocean has to keep going up for the entire boat to be lifted. Alfred says to all the girls listening, books before boys. Focus on building yourself so that you can pick and choose and refuse a man. Exactly. And you don't even need a man if you don't want a man. I mean, the fact that we think that we need to have men in our lives, that's a choice, right? It's not out of necessity, and it shouldn't be out of necessity. Trisha, good morning. Says, I've been saying this for years, HR managers should be ashamed of themselves. But think about it. The majority of HR managers are women, and they work for the organization. So how much power do HR managers actually have? Now, I'm not saying that they don't have any, right? Because I do think probably with a lot of the secretarial jobs, and again, I'm just thinking of my corporate Cayman experience in law firms, they probably don't have to run those positions by management. Although, again, I can tell you that there were times when Tony Travers back in the day was sending out these messages to the secretarial pool. Please stop coming to work looking like you just, you're a barmaid and you just came out of the bars. I knew he wasn't talking to the Caymanians, because I'm like, We not come into work looking nothing like that. It was the expat workers from the UK in particular, that's why he could call them barmaids, from London, who came in looking like they just had a night out at the club. And that's how they were dressing to work. So they didn't even know what was appropriate dress for that environment. And I lost count for the 3.5 years, I think it was, that I was there, how many times Mr. Travers sent out that email reminding them of the necessity to dress the part. And I'm thinking, where did they recruit these people from? I had just come back to Cayman. I'm going, okay, they're supposed to be experienced at secretarial pool, corporate administrators. And if they don't know how to dress, I'm just saying, where did they come from? All right, Trisha says back in 2003, 2006 or 7, McKeever held them accountable. He wasn't my favorite guy. He did following the policy of succession plan for Caymanians. I don't know anything about that. How did he hold them accountable? Doing what exactly? Because he's one of the biggest offenders of women in terms of his behavior that I've ever met in my entire life. So holding who accountable? How did he advance women in the workplace? How did he help women? By grabbing them by their parts, pulling on their hair and beating them as he did in public? I'm a little bit lost here. He's not the poster child example for a politician that has advanced women in the workplace and demanded equal pay for the same work. In fact, if there was any politician who would go in and challenge and remove a woman from her post, it was him. Countless examples, whether it was Angela Martin, whether it was, who else did he, somebody else help me remember, because I know there's been quite a few, that he refused to work with only the women. He refused to work with them and would put them on leave for exorbitant portions of time. Some of them they had to pay out and retire and give them millions of dollars because McKeever Bush would sideline them. So yeah, I'm not so sure he's the example you're looking for there, Trisha. Strong Will says, Auntie, I used to work at A.L. Thompson's and they hired workers from overseas and I had to train them and they were getting more pay than me. Morning, Miss Barbara. She says, I retired from DCFS and went to work building and installing cabinets. Construction has always been my hobby and I do it all, cement or woodwork, thank God. I have saved thousands over the years. Ladies, you can do anything that you put your mind to and hands to. Start with a simple project. Ms. Marla says the ESO data breaks down wages by sector and gender, and I can try to share a chart. So yes, it's definitely in that report. Tartarian makes a controversial statement here. Says, I know a Caymanian woman who had an abortion to save her career. How sad. Wow. I'm sure it happens, Tartarian, much more than we're willing to admit. That's a whole other conversations about access to abortions in Cayman. But, I'm not sure if she went overseas or how she did that. But yes, I mean, think about this. If you don't have the support, and believe it or not, there are women who are even married who feel like they don't have the necessary support to start a family at a particular time. So it's crazy. Same thing. And we see this all the time. Some companies do not want to hire women for fear that they might get pregnant. I know of a young lady who was terminated from her position at a local shipping company when they found out that she was pregnant. Now, they didn't say that, and the owner of that company is a woman. That's who made the decision. And she didn't say the reason why you're being fired is because you've gotten pregnant. However, I can tell you what I know about that woman and how she thinks and the conversations I've heard her. And again, these are Caymanian women, Naina. I want y'all to listen to me very, very carefully. No shocker that they're Trump supporters, but these are Caymanian women who've said to their staff, oh my goodness, I'm so happy that my son had a boy because I would never want him to have a girl. Let me say it again. Caymanian women who have raised Caymanian male children, and this particular person didn't have it, she only had one son, but she actually told somebody else who happened to repeat it to me, and she was shocked because she's the mother of a daughter, that she told her she's so glad that her son didn't have a daughter. Wow. Our own people, women. Again, it wasn't a man that said that. So when I heard that she let go one of her workers as soon as she found out that she was pregnant, I said, well, I wasn't entirely surprised. Tartarian says, funny that you said that. Nothing to do with pay, but my experience with women managers are all bad, just rude and always moody, except for one good female boss I had. She was very nice. And the truth of the matter is, Tartarian, I can't speak to your experiences. You're the only person who can. But what I would say is even the way that men feel about having a female boss, there are certain behaviors that when they look at it in a woman, oh no, she's aggressive, she's this or that, that exact same behavioral trait, verbatim in a man, they wouldn't think about twice. It's okay if men are rude to you or if they, don't cuddle you and hold your hands. But our expectations of women in business is completely different. So when you go and you look at books like Swimming with the Sharks and all this kind of stuff, right? You should have a read of some of those, because it comes back to the point that when women are trying to make it in this corporate world, they have to put on a certain persona or act like their male counterparts in order to get anywhere. But then when they do, they're moody, they're rude, they're the B word, I don't want to work with them, and all these things. And then the men are able to do it quite freely. Live Happy says, Mona is right. A woman has women issues, and cannot continue physical work like a man. However, if she is doing it, then equal pay should be rewarded. What kind of woman issues are you talking about here? I mean, okay. Okay. George said, some say they never want to. I heard this with my own ears. Never want to what? Or women too, let's not discriminate. Anthony says, realistically, women prefer men supervisors and bosses. Do they really? Okay. I mean, I don't know. That's a question certainly for you guys to answer. We can certainly, thanks, George, for clarifying. We can certainly ask that question, but, I think the problem, once again, is when women come into the conversation, the fact that they're trying to act like a man when they're not men. And we have to normalize that there's different management styles to be expected. All right, let me see here now. This person says the majority of HR managers in private and public sector are purely HR administrators who never make any decisions, never on the executive boards, and merely do as they are told. To my point, exactly. Let me give you a big applause here, because that's exactly what my personal experience was, and what I know to be the case. And so even as Ms. Marla talked about this, she said that, she had to applaud the fact that there are some good examples right here in Cayman CUC, one of them, who have demonstrated that it can be done. You can have women in leadership. You can have women sitting on your boards. And those organizations should be applauded for making those types of decisions. Marshall says a lot of women don't respect having a woman as a boss. Abby says the best boss to have is yourself. And of course, that was one of the things most certainly that came up as a discussion point as well. So part of this comes down to being a poverty issue. If we want to escape poverty, we have to ensure that we have equality in pay, equality in let me just get back to the correct pages here for the slides. Equality in the workforce. And so, I love that she quoted in her presentation, Coco Chanel says a girl should be two things, who and what she wants. Because again, there is power in that. Here's a few Caymanian leaders at the directorship level. We have, for example, Ms. Sherry Ebanks, who's chairman since 2014. Again, this is half of CUC's board, including the chair, are women. Ms. Jennifer Dilbert, Sophia Harris, Jennifer Frizzell, Karen Goose, I think is how she pronounces it, or Gose, Kay Menzies, and these people have been directors on the board. Again, very, very different. Think about even government. When we think about government boards, I want to applaud and take this moment to talk about Mr. Wayne Panton. Because remember when Mr. Panton was the premier, and he said that one of the remits, and I can try to go back to this article, one of the remits for him was more equality on government boards. And so more than had happened in the past, he was actually putting women at the helm of different government boards. But when we look at it across the board, most board members and most boards in Cayman, I'm talking about whether it's immigration board, work permit boards, business and staffing board, all these boards, the chairman of those boards tend to be, when it comes to board appointments, it tends to be men as well. And these are people who are then making decisions within our country, right? About all sorts of stuff. So, yep, there is that. I can't put my hand on the article right now, but I do know that that was something that he had said not long after he took over the premiership, that he was looking at greater equality for women and minorities on these various boards. But I challenge you even now to look at these government boards and tell me what percentage of those actually have women as chair. Okay. 9362626. Let me plug my phone back in. I think it's gotten sufficient charge here. And you have a question, comment. How are you feeling about today's discussion? Feel free to give us a call. Have you ever been discriminated in the workplace when it comes to your wages? Were you even aware of it? Because I suspect that a lot of people simply didn't know that they were making less than their male counterparts. All right, Miss Marla says, one thing I want to say about this movement of the conservative folks who promote more traditional values and way of life, women are more educated, paid less, and doing more unpaid work at home. So maybe some people, men and women, are tired of seeing their moms and other women being treated like this. And they think, maybe I should not fight this whole system and be an at-home mom. What I'm going to say again is, I don't know the logic behind their thinking, because they seem to just take a position and accept it. But I'm gonna stick with what Reese Witherspoon said.
Ever let somebody control you with money? Somebody says, I'll take care of it, and I'll take care of you, and I'll take care of this. That person could leave. That person can hurt you. You always keep your job. Your job is your life insurance. My mom used to always say that to me.
Yeah. And so what it does is, I don't know whether or not they're tired of whatever life, but what I do know is it takes opportunities away from you. Remember now, especially in a place like the US, right? Where some people exchange spouses like they change their daily clothing, 50% divorce rate, right? So you go into it knowing that you got a 50-50 chance of that relationship not working out. You go in for the long haul, you have children, whatever, and this person's like, no, you stay at home. I'm going to take care of you. And then what happens? And it doesn't make a difference what salary bracket you're in. whether it's the Bill Gates of the world, look at him and Melinda Gates, whether it is the Jeff Bezos of the world, look at him, and when they know that you are dependent on them for your livelihood, then all of a sudden they actually are in a position where they can dictate even sometimes how many children you're going to have. They're going to dictate where the family goes on vacation. And when they are cheating with the younger, more beautiful, whatever secretary, they think that you have to tolerate and put up with that behavior. Because again, you've not been in the workforce ever, right? Because some 20-year-old is getting up at turning point telling you, don't ever go in the workforce, don't skill yourself, don't upgrade yourself, don't get an education. So what do you then have to offer the world when that relationship falls apart? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to potentially support your children? Right? And then, of course, he's in a position to hire the most high-powered lawyer to fight you for whatever marital assets you might have been legally entitled to. This person says, to answer your question about wages, I did not know the exact salary of the person in my company with a similar position. However, we did have information which was available to everyone of the salary ranges for the various positions in our company. So again, I think that that's great. However, without knowing the exact salary, you never know if you were actually paid on par with your male counterparts or not. All right. But, fair point. Let me just see here now. I know we had a few other comments that are coming in. This person says, good morning. I have to ask for a raise. I have refused the position that offered me less, and I have negotiated salary amounts. HR is not there to protect individuals. Mm-hmm. They are there to protect the interests of the company that we all work for. And this person also said that, speaking of McKeeva Bush, he also retired Diane Montoya as well. There's a long list. I can't think of all of them, but I think it's sufficient to say that there's a long list of people, women specifically, that man refused to work with. I can't remember if Jennifer Ahern was one of his as well, simply because of, and it's so shocking to me how many of these men don't like a woman because she's more intelligent than them. Let's have that conversation too. So some of our bosses are men that we are more intelligent than, and just because, again, they have a particular male anatomy, they've gotten where they've gotten in life. Even on the political front, we do treat and judge women on a very different scale and level than we do the men. Anthony says, Marshall is absolutely right. I've worked with numerous women in the public and private sector and hospitality, and they always complain about women leadership. I just think it's too much estrogen competing. Well, no doubt, as I just said, sometimes women, even, women bosses and owners of companies are our own worst enemies. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that as well. Dave, good morning. Welcome to the conversation. Says gender war is real. Man is the most hated species on this planet. Woman is free to do whatever they want, but notice the type of degrees they get, mostly communication profession, no blue collar jobs. Women think that they are so special. Men don't need women, but want women. We got to work together. So there's a lot there to unpack. And starting with the premise that men are the most hated species on this planet. Well, a man isn't a species. He's part of the human species. So men and women are the same species. So that kind of doesn't even make any sense. But I guess if you're starting out from that being your position, that's kind of a problem, right? I don't think most women hate men. I mean, I agree with how you ended it. It's a partnership. And I think that most women are perfectly happy if they find the right kind of man to be in a relationship with a man. So I've never, I mean, I don't talk to women who just hate men. I don't know anything about that. So anyway, all right. Miss Marla says, in other words, maybe people have just given up fighting for equality. I don't know. I think that a lot of people, again, we're having this conversation today. I think a lot of people are probably surprised with what the data has demonstrated. So I'm not so sure that we've given up. September the 18th, International Equal Pay Day is coming up. And again, this is where communities around the world are going to mark this UN observance, which is dedicated to the ongoing fight for equal pay for work of equal value. It's a call to action to challenge pay discrimination, demand transparency, and build a fair future for all workers. Please mark that date on your calendar, because no doubt we will circle back to some of this conversation at that time as well. We have a gentleman who is weighing in on the conversation here. Let's go ahead and grab this one. They have the following to say. I need to be anonymous on this one. In other words, they're in the chat, but they're like, oh no, I can't put my name on this one. Crucifixion is real. Worst thing I see these days is being born with your reproductive organs on the outside. Oh, Lord, have mercy. You're expected to constantly take it on the chin, no matter how you agree the system needs to change. Accountability always falls into your lap, even if you too are powerless. Equally yoked, not always applied equally. I mean, that's interesting that men are feeling that way. And it's kind of like, you know, when we have the conversation around domestic violence, for example, right? And we say, now we call it gender-based, we talk, well, not domestic violence, let me specify. When we talk about gender-based violence, and then we have men jumping in saying, oh, but men are abused too. And we say, yes, that is true. No one has ever denied that a man can be a victim and that men are being abused. But the numbers do not support that the majority of men, when they are leaving relationships, have to fear for their lives, right? When they're deciding to, you know, I want to end this relationship. I don't want to be married anymore. Or, you know, I'm going to just pack up and walk away. They're not the ones who are more likely to be assaulted, murdered, etc. The most dangerous time in their lives, right, is when they are leaving a relationship. That statistic is 90% women or more. So we're not trying to say that gender-based violence against men doesn't exist. But when we talk about femicide, what is the opposite of femicide? There actually is no word because it's not, let me put it this way. It is not a phenomenon like what it is for women. The opposite of femicide is just murder, right? But we have very specific words that describe what happens to women across all sorts of countries, Latin America, South America, the Caribbean. Have you ever thought about why there has not been a male counterpart term? Well, technically, right, it is called androcide, but I can bet you that you have never even heard of it. The systemic or targeted killing of men and boys, because it is far less likely to happen statistically than femicide. You can look at all sorts of UN reports to, obviously the data is there. want this to be a conversation of against men or men versus women, because we're all in this together. World statistics prove that when women are more educated, right? Let's talk about some of the global numbers here now. Families benefit. Children in particular benefit. Communities benefit. So all of the poorest nations all over the world, whether it's in Africa, South and Central America, the Caribbean, when the women in those communities are empowered, when the women in those communities are able to start small businesses, when they are able to elevate themselves by way of whether it is formal education or trade school training, and they can get a skill, the GDP of those countries rises when the women are elevated and when they have opportunities. So as we said towards the end of the conversation, this isn't about, oh, we're just trying to benefit women in a society. We're trying to benefit the entire country, all of our communities, the world. So that is why it's actually important. Now, here's something that might shock you, and maybe it won't shock you given the context of what we're dealing with in the United States of America at the moment. But the gap in the US in particular is actually getting worse. So women earned 84 cents on the dollar in 2022 compared to men, 83 cents in 2023, and 81 cents in 2024. For the first time since this data has been collected, the gender wage gap widened in 2 consecutive years in a row. Hear it again. For the first time since this data has been collected, the gender wage gap in the US widened 2 consecutive years in a row. Now it's back to roughly where it stood in 2017. This is, and again, you've got to understand the political movement that has contributed to this, right? It has erased nearly a decade of incremental progress for women. Now, here's what's interesting. The driving force wasn't that women's wages fell. It's that men's wages increased by 3.7%, while women's wages stayed flat. And again, women in leadership remain severely unrepresented, with women representing only 41.2% of the global workforce, and yet hold only 28.8% of the top management roles. Women remain concentrated in the low-paid, people-centric sectors, 58.5% in healthcare and care, and 52.9% in education. So where do we go from here? How do we get to full global parity, right? Well, we start with what we have here in the Cayman Islands, because I think there's so much that we can do. It's a smaller population, and so we need to start looking at some of these issues. But, you know, I always like to think about things in a bigger, more global scale. And I think this statistic will shock, because it certainly shocked me. At the current pace that we're going, where we have this retrograding of ideas and, you know, all of this, we've just lost a decade of consecutive, lost a decade basically of incremental progress in the US alone. Full global gender parity is projected to take 123 years. 123 years before we have globally equality in pay. Now, am I the only person who's thinking that that's crazy? So it's not going to happen in my lifetime. It's not going to happen in our children's lifetime. I guess it depends on how long our grandchildren might live. This economic participation and opportunity gap has improved by only 5.6 percentage points since 2006, with full parity projected to take another 135 years if current trends persist. What that means is 123 years. Let's take the first number. That means that your granddaughter's granddaughter, listen again, your granddaughter's granddaughter may still be fighting this exact same battle. Mind-blowing. Here's another interesting statistic. Global disclosure of gender pay gap data has risen from 15% in 2021 to 48% in 2026. So now we have the data that's kind of catching up, but still 40%, 48%, not the best. Yet only 1.66% of companies have actually closed their gap. So they have the information now, and as I think it was, I don't know if it was Miss Anita, but you know, how do we address it? We address it by first having the information. So we went from 15% in 2021, 48% global disclosure in 2026, yet only 1.66% of companies have actually closed the gap. Europe, interestingly enough, is leading the charge. The proportion of European companies publishing gender pay gap data rose from 59% in 2025 to 74% in 2026. And this was driven by the UE Pay Transparency Directive. So this is where our elected leaders, locally, regionally, and globally, they can make all the difference in the world. So this EU Pay Transparency Directive was put in place and obviously has made a significant difference in the information that is now being disclosed. Right? So you can check this out for yourselves, obviously. This is part of the European Commission. And the EU pay transparency rules aim to increase pay transparency. My apologies. Increase the principle of equal pay and improve access to justice for victims who are not being paid equally. So go check this out. I think that you'll find it very, very interesting. And this started to take foot across the European Union. So strengthening enforcement of the principle of equal pay between men and women, improving access to justice for victims of pay discrimination. And the Commission only adopted the proposed directive on pay transparency back in 2023. So already we can see in just less than 3 years, really, that there has been a significant change. Let me just see here. Right. So again, our policy makers can certainly do something about this, right? Now, North America being an outlier and a risk factor because 85%, again, no surprise really, 85% of North American companies do not disclose gender, my apologies, disaggregated pay data. And the United States, shocker, the United States has the lowest disclosure rate of any market analyzed. Why are we not surprised by this? Just 15% of US companies publish gender pay gap information, and it's down 2 percentage points from 2025. And you think there's a coincidence with who's in leadership there now? No. At the current rate of change, it would take nearly 4 decades for the US to reach the transparency standards that Europe has achieved in just 4 years. Let me say it again, because I know y'all not paying attention. It would take nearly 4 decades for the US to reach the same transparency standards that Europe has achieved in just 4 years. The US has nothing when it comes to labor that we should be emulating. Trust and believe me. Just saying. Iceland tops the global ranking for the 16th consecutive years with 92.6% of its gender gap closed, and still the only economy to have closed more than 90% of the gap. The top 3 economies are all Nordic nations: Iceland, Finland, and Norway, interestingly enough. The timeline for achieving full parity are starkest in Asia and the Middle East. Kind of no surprise. South Asia projected at 138 years, East Asia and the Pacific at 179 years, and MENA at 185 years. By contrast, Latin America is projected at 57 years and Europe at 76 years. So the WEF identified what it calls the drop to the top phenomenon, where women dominate classrooms but are underrepresented in boardrooms. Across much of the developing world, economic participation and opportunity scores remain the lowest globally. So this again connects directly to the data that we see here in the Cayman Islands, which Ms. Marla presented. And more educated women, but clustering at the bottom of the wage scale. All right. We will definitely, this is one of those discussions you can't have just once. We will undoubtedly be circling back to this at some point. My apologies. Waking Up the Cayman Islands says government boards, why are people chosen based on gender? How about choosing the best men and women for the job? So I'm not saying that they're chosen based on gender. I'm saying the facts speak for themselves. But most of those appointed are men, especially board chairmen. And so you have to think about who is actually making those decisions. It's our politicians, right? So if they don't have a mandate amongst themselves or a directive amongst themselves about let's try to identify women leaders to put on these boards, then by default, because these are really political appointments, let's be pretty clear what these things are. The majority of them, you don't have to apply for or anything like that. They're political appointments. And so men, I think it was the last election we had the most women in parliament, right? But, you know, we lost one with Miss Barbara. So we have Miss Kathy, we gained Miss Julie, Heather Bodden, Perlina McGaw, Lumsden. Who else is an elected official? It's a female. That's it? Am I missing anybody else? I'm thinking by district now. Georgetown, East End, West Bay. It's just 4? So last time I think we had more. But, you know, when they're sitting in cabinet and they are, hold on, am I missing anybody? Oh God. She's going to think I forgot about her on purpose, but I swear I didn't. Juliana O'Connor Conley. Yes, she is a woman still. So that's 5, right? So, you know, women don't, even as elected officials, they don't make up the majority. And so, you know, yeah. Gabby says if men are the most hated, it's because of the countless atrocities committed by men Yes, women have done terrible things as well, but if we were to look at it on a scale, the men break the scale. Mr. George says the Equal Pay Act has been in effect in the UK for decades now. I did not know that modern democratic societies have this anomaly. Maybe I have not been updated. I must read more. Well, that's good. That's good to recognize, you know. And I'm glad that this has highlighted this issue for some of you who maybe had never even thought it was an issue. Dave says that AI is projected to wipe out about 50% of jobs held by women. Equal pay is going to be the least of the problems in 123 years to come. There'll be no jobs, I think. There'll be a push to repair the family as a unit. Better laws to protect both genders. Women won't win this AI push based on the career most women do. Even doctors and laws won't escape AI. I'm curious as to where you actually obtained that data from, because I'm going to now use my AI assistant to fact check that statement, Mr. Dave. So give me a minute, because I'll tell you whether or not that factually holds any water. Yes, Miss Julie. Thank you, Anthony. Amir says your friend Juliana O'Connor. I legit forgot about her. Lord have mercy. She's been so quiet, not doing a thing, kicking up her feet in Cayman Brack. Live Happy says, sorry, CMR, stop there, pump the brakes. No domestic helper is not raising my children. That's my responsibility. They only help us prepare them daily. Well, you'd be surprised how many are doing way more than that. But regardless of whatever the help comes in terms of the form of help, you can still appreciate, no doubt, how, that helps the women, certainly in the families, but the family unit as a whole. Okay. All right, let's see what my AI assistant said in response to that. Okay, so it had the following to say. This statement in the screenshot is a mix of speculation, misunderstandings about AI forecasts, and under-substantiated claims rather than factual evidence-based assertions. No credible projection supports it as written. All right, Dave, you paying attention? Occasionally we have to fact check things here. In fact, it's one of the things in 2026, thanks to AI, that we're doing more of when people make such bold statements. We want to fact check it to see what facts we can find to support it. So here's what further information. Reconstructing the statement. From the screenshot, the commenter appears to be saying roughly that AI is projected to wipe out more than 60% of jobs, mostly held by women. Equal pay will be the least of the problems in 123 years, as there will be no jobs, and women won't win the AI push because of the career that most women choose, and even doctors and lawyers will not escape. So just summarizing what you said, the exact wording is informal and imprecise. For example, whip out more than 50% of the jobs, which already suggests it is not directly quoting a specific study or report. What major studies actually say? Leading sources on automation and AI impacts from OECD, ILO, the World Bank, IMF, McKinsey, PwC, etc., do not project that more than 60% of jobs will be eliminated, nor that women's jobs will disappear in the way suggested. Broad patterns from these reports, many reports estimate that between 10 to 30% of jobs are at high risk of automation in advanced economies over the next couple of decades, with more jobs experiencing partial task automation rather than total elimination. Some analysis find that women's jobs may find slightly higher exposure to certain types of automation, particularly routine, clerical, and administrative work, but they also show women are more represented in care, and this is what we were just talking about, right? The jobs that women are in, care, education, and health roles that are relatively less automatable. So in some ways, women might have more security in jobs because of like healthcare, education, and care jobs. Most forecasters forecast stress job transformation, which is task changing, new roles emerging rather than wholesale disappearance of work or an end to employment altogether. None of the major studies use a figure resembling 60% of jobs are gone, mostly women's, nor do they forecast no jobs in a century plus time frame. The problems with your 60% of jobs, mostly women, claim there's no identifiable source, magnitude and targeting, so 60% or greater deduction of jobs, mostly held by women, implies a level and gender pattern of displacement that is inconsistent with existing empirical work, which tends to show nuanced sector-specific impacts affecting both genders in different ways. The time horizon in 123 years is not a standard planning horizon used by labor economists. Projections beyond a few decades are inherently speculative and are not treated as reliable forecasts. Given these issues, the specific claims about the 60% plus scale, gender focus, mostly women, and certainly projected to happen, is not supported by current evidence. So we could go on because my AI tools are extensive, but I think you get the point, and we will leave it there. So they say that opinion misrepresents existing AI and jobs research rather than a factual summary of any recognized study. Okay. Abby says AI isn't going to steal your job. A human who uses AI to do your job 10 times more effectively will. People are acting like AI sits in silos and it's just doing everything on its own. It's people who are actually using the AI tools. And that's why y'all better learn how to use them, honey child. You better get with the times. That would be my best advice. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up. I got a whole desk here to clear off this morning that no degree of AI is going to help me with. That's manual labor that I'm going to have to do on my own. All right, this person has the following to say about Mr. McKeeva Bush. So let's make sure now, folks, that we remember history correctly and don't try to rewrite it. As I was in court this week, I was flabbergasted at how people take, as I said to the judge, I said, some people take a lot of liberty with the truth. They make up their own version of reality. And whilst that might be interesting to them, it's not factual. And things don't happen a particular way just because someone says that it did. I was also shocked in court, when she said she was put in jail for stealing her own salary. The judge doesn't, he's not going to argue with her on any of these things. So he didn't really, but my brain is like, what? You went to jail for stealing your own salary. No, you didn't. Do you forget that if this judge wanted to, he could pull up those archive records to see why you were actually imprisoned? That had nothing to do with the present case. But for her to even make such a statement in a court of law, knowing that the judge could call her to task on it, I just find shocking. And it demonstrates the degree of delusion that so many of our people are operating under. And then, they publicly get in public spaces and say this stuff to the wider audience, and you guys believe it. Start to pick sense from nonsense, as Caymanians would say. Gloria Matfield-Nixon. She was put on leave for 2 years from DOT specifically because of McKeeva Bush. That's when she got her law degree. So another example of how McKeeva Bush has not assisted women, not helped with the pay discrepancy at all. This person says, I've had a great female manager. I've had an awful female manager. I've had a great male manager, and I've had an awful male manager. It depends on the individual personality. All Okay. Oh, this is thank you so much. I'm just seeing your comments now. Let me just grab these so I can share it on my one thing I've noticed. Marlon was working on my computer for me. Bless his heart, because it's not doing what it was doing before. He said he actually took out the drive and it had dust bunnies on it. So he started to clean it. So all of because everything was crashing. Word was crashing. I couldn't even use Chrome anymore. So those issues, funny enough, when he was putting in the new drive, those issues have disappeared. But what I've noticed is once I start up the camera and the video, like to do the show, my screen keeps constantly blinking and flickering off and on. So I'm not an IT expert, but in my limited experience, I said to him this morning, maybe you need to do something with the graphics card, like blow that off or something as well. Because I didn't have that issue, but now I'm having that issue. So there you go. So a new issue presents itself. So I'm hoping he can sort that out for me, and then we're gonna be rocking and rolling again if we can get that sorted out. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull this up. So thank you guys so much for certainly participating in today's conversation. Now, is it today that World Cup starts? Today's Thursday, right? Let me get you some information on World Cups. Of course, there's all sorts of, kicks off today with Mexico and South America. There are all sorts of, controversy with the U.S. Denying that Somalian guy access to go into the country. He's a coach, not a coach, referee. And there's a thing I was watching this morning about the inequality. Speaking of inequality, the inequality of the African nations being represented in World Cup, not just the matches, but also, just they claim that the African countries, which represent 25% of the voting rights within FIFA, are marginalized when it comes to their participation, their access, and so on. And this has been a long-standing situation. So give me 1 second here. I'm also going to pull up this other comment about today's discussion as well. Honey child. All right. So this person had the following to say. They said, good morning. I can attest to all that has been said this morning. I've spent 24 years in the workforce and always paid less than my male counterparts, despite carrying more and heavier qualifications than them. I am now an SME owner and boss. A couple of my male employees struggle with me as a boss. There's a cultural element too. Country to remain nameless. I don't think you need to tell us. Is it in the Caribbean? But these are real and live issues in 2026. I don't foresee any changes in my lifetime. Most of us women don't like to be in masculine energy, but we're left with little choice when some men tap out easily. Girl, that is so powerful. And as someone who, is also a business owner and works in this space, it is interesting to look at these things from that perspective, because yes, a lot of my clients happen to be, not all, but a lot of them happen to be men. And so I'm having to deal with men. I'm having to, they're my clients. And then I've got female clients. And so I think that a lot of times the discussions that we have and how we meet each other is indeed very, very different based on gender. And this kind of made me think when I was reading that from that listen to the program is I actually, I have one male client. They're fantastic. They're amazing. And it took them like 2 years of back and forth discussions for me to be able to onboard them. And part of the issue, which is very, very interesting, as they saw the persona of myself as being very, very strong and like, oh my God, she comes across so strong. And so, and you know, thank God there was a man who was willing to go to bat to say, listen, that's what people love about her. Her audience loves that. Her audience loves that she just brings it to the table and kaboom, there's no sugarcoating it. And that's why she's got the #1 talk show. That's why people are tuned in. That, you know, if you're looking for someone to hold your hand when it comes to discussions that are happening and relevant in this country, this ain't it. This is not the platform. And so he said, but there's nothing wrong with that because she's still going to give you the exposure that you're looking for. And ultimately, isn't that what you want? And so eventually they're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. All eyes on, yeah, people are participating. She's going to reach the audience that we're trying to reach. So I totally get and understand the challenges because, yeah. Soka says to anyone trying to find CMR on their phone, click more, click events, and click watch live. Finally figured it out, and people have been messaging me too. Well, Soka, I'm going to say this again because I'm of the opinion that you say something, she's talking about Facebook. I'm of the opinion that you say something once, you got to say it about 1 million times for people to actually get it. Let me show you how Facebook actually works. And we've gone over this before, but like I said, I get it from a communications perspective. I got to tell y'all 1 million times, and I'm happy to tell you again. This single easiest way to get there, okay? And I'm going to show it to you on the screen. Give me 1 second here. The easiest way to do this, and it's really easy, whether you're on your phone, you're on a desktop, once you go into Facebook. All right, hold on a second. It's this tab here. Yeah. So when you go into Facebook, here we are in Facebook, all you have to do is go to the CMR page. So your shortcuts, I mean, I have it obviously. And then you don't have to go to all them steps. You see right here, the logo where it says live, just click on that. And that takes you right to the live show. You don't have to do anything else. Click on live. And then this is the live stream that we're watching right now. It looks weird. My apologies. I hate when I share a Facebook page because it's like a screen within a screen within a screen. But that's all you have to do. Okay? So let's come out of it. All you have to do is click that right there. In fact, that's the easiest way for you to know that you're even live because it says it right there. I hope they don't ever change this because it's super easy. Live, you click on that picture and boom, you're in. Because yes, they no longer put it for the most of the live shows. It is super frustrating for us, trust and believe me, but it no longer shows up on the main page under posts. So I would have to manually post it there. Sometimes it still does, but I found that the majority of times it actually doesn't. It works the same way on the phone. Yes, it works the exact same way on the phone. So if you're not getting notifications, I'm going to show you. Hold on. If you're not getting notifications, you go to the Facebook app, right? You click on CMR. See? Oops. I have the thing, but all you do is click on that same little icon. See? And it takes you straight to the live. It's the same thing. Just find that little, let me show you a screenshot because I can pull up my screen on the computer, but we're not getting into all of that right now. All right, so hold on. So it's the same exact thing on the phone. Just go to the page and click on the picture and you're in the live when it's live. Now, hopefully most of you are still getting notifications, but if you're not, and you have to manually go find it, this is how you do it. Because you know the schedule. But it should, and what you can do is make sure, because Facebook changes how you get notified about different pages and stuff like that. So yeah. So here it is. We click on that live at the top, and it's still the exact same thing. No, I'm not telling you it's going to show a live button. You go to the page and you click on the profile picture. Try it right now, Soka. Come out of wherever you are, go back to the CMR page and just click on the profile picture and see if it doesn't take you to the live. So yeah, just click on the logo or whatever the profile picture is, because the profile picture doesn't necessarily have to be a logo. It can be anything. Right? But yeah, I think it still notifies some people sometimes it doesn't. But hopefully you're still getting notifications. But it's a bit weird because when you, let me just show you an example here. Okay, hold on. When you actually, okay, let me share this page again. Okay, so here we are. When you're actually here, if you again go to the page and you follow the page, so I'm following the page, you can specify, hold on. You can specify here whether you want, like how you want to be notified, whether you want to, where you see all the posts in the usual order. You'll see posts higher in your feed. So technically, this is the one that you would want. So even myself, because obviously I don't need to follow CMR per se, but maybe I should follow it as a favorite. So this is the top one. When you click on favorites, that means that you're going to see it higher than other stuff. And you can only select so many pages as favorites. I can't remember what the number is for Facebook. But there's that. You can say like live video notifications. So highlights all live notifications from this page. So maybe that's what you should do, is go check your settings for what you're notified. And then for live video, you select all notifications, because by default, it's just going to do suggested ones. And of course, you can turn it off as well if you don't want to get any notifications. So if you change it to this one, you'll get, see, when it goes live, now it's like top priority there. And you can do it for other content as well. So right now, content highlights, or I can do standard, which is up to 5 post notifications per day, or you can turn it off. So you can individually decide for certain types of content exactly what you want, and then you click on update, and it's as easy as that. Listen, again, when I was in court, I was a bit surprised that Carrie made this comment to the judge, and it shows how little she understands the platforms that she's on. She actually made a comment how, I had said stuff about her over the years, and I've gone and removed all of my videos so that she would not have any evidence. I was like, do you know how many live videos, folks, we have done over the last 7 years? She thinks I have time to go back and delete what would be thousands of videos because of her. This is when somebody thinks they're a little bit too important in this world. Like it's shocking. What happened is Facebook actually has a new video policy that they dropped last year. But some of y'all want to get in this arena, and you don't even understand what you're doing. So I can't remember the exact date, but I think it was last year sometime, and anybody can go research and look this up for themselves. Facebook automatically deletes live videos after 30 days after the broadcast. And so they actually went back and removed, and they gave us an opportunity, because they did send a message to say, hey, we're going to be deleting this batch. Do you want to download and archive these? And so they literally went through and deleted every single live video. I think it's just because since COVID, so many people now go live, and we're using platforms like YouTube, Facebook, etc., that their servers couldn't sustain it and keep it a free platform for people. So the compromise is they were going to remove all of our historical live videos, and then they were going to, going forward, the new policy is 30 days it's there, and then it disappears after 30 days. But she's a martyr in her own head. She's targeted by everybody in her own head. So she thinks, and she actually said this in court, and I'm just sitting there shaking my head like, oh my God, the level of ignorance and people who don't even try to learn something. I'm just like, it's shocking. This is what she tells the judge. I didn't even correct her. I'm like, this is stupid. This thing got nothing to do with what the judge has to decide today anyway. So I just couldn't even be bothered. Shocking and unbelievable. You can't find her page anymore because she took it down as a result of my lawsuit. That's why you can't find her page. So, but knowing her, she'll start up another page again. This is what happens. She'll start up another page again and start all over like she has done in the past until somebody takes her to court again. And that is why I want to say it again, because, you know, I recognize the pattern of behavior, and I recognize what happens. Everybody gets to this point in the proceedings. Dan Scott, Maples and Calder, representing the 4 accounting firms, PwC, Ernst & Young, all of them. They all get to this point where they force her to take down the content. They made her take down Compass Media, Pinnacle Media had sued her as well. They made her take down her page, right? They don't go any further. So she thinks in her head, oh, the only consequence will be someone at their cost is going to take me to court, and most of them don't seek costs from her. So they're going to take me to court. I just show up, talk pure nonsense, don't make no sense, isn't factual, nothing. And the judge will say, take it down. And that's the end of the consequence, which for some people, you could clearly see where that's not a real consequence at all. Oh, she's taking it down now. The court has dictated it with a penal order. So if she don't take it down, she'll be going to jail. So let me be very clear now in terms of exactly where I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to go the full 9 yards. You've taken it down. The judge has ordered you to take it down, and the penal code, penal orders in place, but I'm not done. No. We're going to go all the way to actually getting a damages amount. It could be $5. It could be $100,000. I don't know what the judge will say for damages, but we're going to go the full 9, and we're going to get that. Because at that point, people have got to realize that when you defame a person, when you lie and make up stories about people, which you have no evidence for, although in your podcast you claim you had evidence, then when you actually get to court, your defense is, oh, I was just joking. I was roasting her. There's zero evidence for what I actually had to say. That's not a defense in law. So yeah, we're going the full 9. And I really hope that that sends home the point that I'm not going to play with certain people. Nobody really, but your time has run out after putting up with quite a bit. Lady D says there are too many in prominent positions have narcissistic ways with the need to have total control. Well, the narcissism in Cayman is on high alert. Let me tell you something. I don't know if it's because we all now can recognize more of these narcissistic personality traits. And obviously, these people have not been diagnosed as having narcissistic personality disorder, but we certainly recognize some of the traits, right? And so we're labeling them as, you know, as you say, narcissistic ways, because we have more information at our disposal. We have more understanding of these people. And so, yeah, there's a lot of narcissists out there, honey child. It is crazy. Strong Wilt says Carrie's a sick woman. She's loco. Abby says that the Indian brother sent his boys and Kurt Walton for you. Well, apparently he emailed Kurt Walton complaining about me. Meanwhile, Kurt Walton and the police are investigating him for no less than 10 complaints from all sorts of different people in the community. So the police are actively investigating him. There has to be a way to recognize when someone is spiraling from a mental health episode, and immediate independent assessment can be done of that person so that they can get help right away. And clearly that simply is not happening. So I think he posted something about me yesterday. Great for him. Whatever. Like that's going to have anything to do with me. Lord of mercy. So yes, that is the case. All right. So we'll post up something about World Cup today, but here are the matches. Someone said I said South America. My apologies. I did not mean to see South America. Up first, we have South Africa. Mexico and South Africa is today in Group A. I already have someone messaging me now. Sandy, you can come and sort us out in the office with a TV box, please. Sure can, so that everybody can sit there and watch World Cup. Not a problem, honey child. I got you. And then tomorrow we've got South Korea and Czechia. Is this a new country or is that Czechoslovakia? Different country now? Those European countries forever breaking up and changing their name. Canada is also tomorrow, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then we have the USA on Saturday playing their first game against Paraguay. So for the next month, folks, World Cup fever. We'll try to keep you guys updated on how it's going. But it's so much controversy surrounding World Cup that it is low-key wild. No, sir. Oh, yes, we're going to get you set up at the office with some football today. Yay. All right. Okay. Yep. Fantastic. So who out of these two matches, let me see, who are you guys pulling for today? Mexico or South Africa? Who's Irvin says, I'm heading home right now. So who's your favorite? All right, we'll put up some daily things around this just for fun on our social media channel. All right, beautiful folks, please have yourselves an enjoyable and safe day. Be careful on the roadways. We still have some inclement weather here and there. And yeah, I'm going to try to clear off my desk because next week I've got, oh my God, she's soon going to be 10 years old. I can't even believe it. She's 9 right now, but next week she is going to be out of school. So we're going to do some camps, but during the day, we also have schoolwork and reading and other stuff on the agenda. So I got to make sure we have a nice, clean and clear workspace from which to operate. Lisa says she's going with Mexico, honey child. Strong Will says Jamaica and Cayman are playing next week. Cayman plays in the World Cup. I didn't think so. Stop it. All right, folks. So we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. It's Friday. Yeah. So, yep. Okay. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels. And visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.